If you've spent any time at all researching Northwest Arkansas online, watching videos, reading articles, scrolling through comments, you've almost certainly run into a version of this sentiment. Northwest Arkansas used to be great. The Walton family ruined it. There's too much development. It's just not the same anymore. And then you look at the actual data and you see that about 40 people a day are still moving here, every single day. So who's right? Is Northwest Arkansas still worth moving to in 2026? Or has all the growth and development changed the calculus? I'm Eric Eby, executive broker with the Naturally NWA Home Team. I've been licensed for over 10 years and I've helped over 300 families relocate to Northwest Arkansas. And I've personally lived here for over 20 years. I actually topped the hill on Highway 49 coming into Fayetteville for the first time in 2003, and it felt like home right away, and I've never left. So when people ask me if Northwest Arkansas is still worth moving to, I don't answer that as a salesperson. I answer it as someone who made the same decision you're thinking about making and has watched this place evolve for over 2 decades. Here's what we're going to cover. I want to start with the "it's being ruined" crowd because I think it's worth taking seriously and understanding what they're actually saying rather than just dismissing it. Then I want to talk about what's genuinely gotten better here because the development story is actually pretty awesome when you look at it clearly. Then I'm going to be straight with you about the one thing that has genuinely gotten worse. And then we'll wrap up with why I still think 2026 is a strong time to make this move and what the value picture actually looks like compared to where most people are coming from. Let's get into it. All right, let's start out with the critics because I think they deserve a fair hearing before I tell you why I disagree with them. I get comments on my videos pretty regularly from people who have lived in Northwest Arkansas for a long time, sometimes their whole lives, who are genuinely unhappy about how much the region has changed. And I want to be clear that I'm not dismissing those feelings because they're coming from a real place. What they're describing is the loss of a certain kind of Northwest Arkansas that existed before the growth wave really hit. A slower pace, lower prices, less traffic, more open land, and more of that rural Ozark character that made this corner of Arkansas feel like a hidden gem. When they say the Walton family ruined it, what they usually mean is that the investment and development that's made NWA into a destination has also made it more expensive, more crowded, and more like everywhere else. And honestly, they're not wrong about what changed. They're just evaluating it through a completely different lens than someone relocating from Denver or Dallas or Los Angeles. Here's the thing, if you grew up here and you're mourning a version of NWA where you could drive anywhere in 10 minutes and buy a house for under $200,000, the growth is a loss. I get that. But if you're coming from a city where you sit in traffic for an hour each way and you can't afford a house that's big enough for your family, the version of NWA that exists today is an upgrade on virtually every dimension of your current life. The "it's being ruined" crowd would genuinely prefer to be neighbors with a herd of cows and drive 20 minutes to get gas and groceries. And there's nothing wrong with that, it's just a completely different set of priorities than most of the people watching this video have. Okay, here's what I actually want you to hear because the story of what's being built in NWA right now is honestly pretty awesome. The development that the "it's being ruined" crowd is upset about is the same development that's making NWA one of the most interesting mid-sized metros in the entire country. And when you look at the scope of what's happening here right now, it's hard to argue that this place is getting worse. It's getting better in ways that matter for the people who are considering moving here. The trail system in Bentonville is already world-class and it keeps growing. Crystal Bridges keeps expanding its programming. The food scene, especially in Bentonville and Fayetteville, has become legitimately impressive. Ozark United Football Club is building a $250 to $350 million sports and entertainment district. A $62 million aquatic center just got approved in Fayetteville. Arkansas Children's Northwest just completed an $82 million hospital expansion. The Walmart home office brought in 15,000 employees into Bentonville and is continuing to reshape the professional landscape of the entire region. This is a region that's being actively, intentionally built up, and the people doing the building have deep pockets and long-term horizons. The Walton family investment in NWA isn't a real estate flip. It's a multi-generational commitment to making this place into something extraordinary. You can debate the aesthetics of that all you want, but the quality of life infrastructure it's creating is objectively good for the people who are going to live here. And the thing that I think gets undersold in all of this is the job market. The diversity of employers that have been drawn to NWA because of the Walmart supplier ecosystem means that this region has an economic resilience that most cities this size simply don't have. The number of industries represented here, from retail, logistics, tech, healthcare, agriculture, arts, and culture, is remarkable for a metro of this scale. And that matters if you're moving here for a career or thinking about whether you'll have options if your current job situation changes. All right, I promised you an honest answer, so let's talk about the one thing that has actually gotten worse, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It's traffic. That's the honest answer. NWA has a traffic problem that is a direct consequence of 40 people a day moving here, and it's gotten meaningfully worse over the last several years. Highway 102 in Bentonville backs up. The I-49 corridor during rush hour is a real frustration. If you're commuting across the metro twice a day, you're going to feel it. Now, I want to give you context for that because I think the NWA traffic experience is still very different from what most people are coming from. I talk to people every week who relocate from Dallas or Los Angeles or the Bay Area, and they describe the NWA commute as almost disorienting in how manageable it is compared to what they were dealing with back home. So worse than it used to be and bad are not the same thing. But I'm not gonna pretend there's no trade-off here, because there is. The NWA of 2026 requires more intentionality about where you live relative to where you work than the NWA of 2015 did. If you buy a house without thinking about your commute corridor, you will feel that mistake every day. The good news is that it's a solvable problem. It just requires being thoughtful about location when you're shopping, which is exactly the kind of thing I help people navigate. So after all of that, is it still worth it? Here's my answer: yes. And here's why I say that with confidence rather than just as a sales pitch. NWA has appreciated significantly since 2019. We're talking roughly 70%. And that's the number that makes people nervous when they're reaching out from out of state. But here's what that number doesn't tell you. So did every market you're probably comparing it to. Denver is up, Dallas is up, SoCal is up. The difference is that Northwest Arkansas ran from a much lower starting point, which means even after all that appreciation, you're still getting dramatically more house for your money here than in most of the cities where people are relocating from. We did a whole video on this that I'll link in the description, but the short version is that a $500,000 to $600,000 budget in Northwest Arkansas gets you a 2,500 to 3,000 square foot home in a great neighborhood. That same budget in most of the markets people are leaving gets you something significantly smaller or significantly farther from where you want to be. And beyond the housing value, the trajectory of this place matters. The investment happening here right now, the sport districts, the hotels, the hospital expansions, the trail systems continuing to grow, is investment in the future quality of life of the people who live here. Every major amenity that gets built makes the case for moving here stronger, not weaker. The people who moved here 5 years ago didn't have the aquatic center or the Ozark United Football Club stadium coming in. These people moving here now will. The question I always tell people to ask themselves is not, is NWA perfect? Because it's not, nowhere is. The question is, compared to where I am right now, does this place give me a better version of the life that I want to live? For the vast majority of the people I work with, the answer is yes, by a lot. So here's where I land on this. The people who say NWA is being ruined are describing something that's true for them. The version of Northwest Arkansas they loved has changed. But the version of NWA that exists today is better than ever for people who are moving here from major metros. And the version that will exist 5 years from now is going to be better still. The traffic is real and worth taking seriously when you're deciding where to live within the region. But the value, the amenities, the job market, the outdoor access, the community, all of it still holds up, and in most cases, it's better than it was. If you're in the research phase right now and you've been going back and forth on whether this move makes sense, I'd love to have that conversation with you. Not to talk you into anything, because after 20 years here and hundreds of relocations, I have a pretty clear picture of who this place is and isn't right for. And that kind of honest conversation is a lot more useful than another pros and cons list. Go ahead and reach out to me whenever you're ready. And if this video was useful, check out the video pinned to the top of my channel. It tells you a lot more about who I am and why I ended up here. And subscribe if you want even more honest content about living in Northwest Arkansas. I'll see you guys on the next one.